The Bible in no way makes an argument that the earth was created in 7 actual days. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. To make the argument that the Bible argues for the earth being created in 7 actual days is to ignore some simple, clear indications to the contrary. This whole concept originates in the first chapter of Genesis. But here's the problem. The first chapter of Genesis is a poem. It is poetry. And it's really clear. You don't have to be a super scholar to understand, because the people who translated the Bible have a way of indicating to the reader whenever they encounter poetry in the original text. Because sometimes, the rhyming scheme doesn't come over from one language to another. So in order to let readers know that they're reading poetry, they change the formatting of the text to something called a hanging indent. And you're familiar with what a hanging indent from your bibliography page or your works cited page from your research papers in school. It's where the first line is to the left, and all the subsequent lines are indented further. So when you read a good translation of the first chapter of Genesis, you actually see it. Let me show you. And that's just the Bible app. You can look at it in a bunch of different text forms on actual paper. You can find the same thing. The reason that's there is to let you know, as the reader, that it is poetry. And that's ignoring the whole part of explaining that we know a lot more about science today than we did thousands of years ago, a lot more of the nature of the universe and all of that kind of stuff. You don't even have to get to that part of the argument because it's a poem. And that means that the 7 days, well, that's a metaphor for a deeper meaning. We're not going to get into that. That's a whole other video. And no one in their right mind would ever think that you should go to a poem to discover scientific data. We do that by scientific consensus, and the consensus is pretty clear. We evolved from apes. The universe is 13.8 billion years old, and it all started with a big bang. And no, God is not what made it go bang. That's something called God of the gaps. We don't need that. So why is this important? Well, it's important because when people are forced to choose between science and a religious text, it's a pretty simple choice. It's science. But the problem is, you don't have to choose between the two. In fact, those are two separate sets of tools to examine life and reality. And if you only get to use one, if you only feel like you can use one, well, you miss out on a lot of insight that can make your life way better and help you be the best version of yourself. So you don't have to choose. You can believe science. You can also believe the Bible, because they aren't at war with each other.